So generally, when people are getting started with cold email for the first time, they usually ask me, "Hey Patrick, I want to do cold emailing, but I just don't know who I should email. Or where do I start?" And so in this section, what we're gonna do is cover exactly who you should target to get the most amount of reward for the time you put in. So we're going to introduce to you the ideal customer profile, also known as ICP in the sales world. So for an ideal customer profile, generally what you're doing is that you're identifying or creating some type of avatar of who you believe will be the best customer for you. And so basically you're trying to figure out what your product or service is and who best you can serve, and those are the people that you're gonna go after. And the reason why you wanna do this is because you don't wanna waste your time with people who just plainly aren't a good fit for your product or service, and you wanna go for people who are really likely to buy. And so when you're mapping out your ideal customer profile, you wanna map out the characteristics of your top 5 to 10% of customers, meaning that, if you already have customers, look at who's generating the top 5 to 10% of the revenue and go for people like that. You don't want to waste your time with the other 90% because they're just not going to really be that impactful to your business. So focus on what's working and hyper focus on that, and that's how you're going to scale up. And the second part to really pay attention to is you want to go for people that have the high likelihood of purchasing, meaning that certain potential customers that you might talk to, there may be certain deal breakers that make it very unlikely for them to purchase your product or service. So you want to just go for the people that, have a high chance of buying, because why would you spend time on people who aren't going to buy anything at all? And so when you're creating the ideal customer profile, there's a lot of ways you can slice and dice it, and it really depends on what your product or service is and who you're trying to serve. So I'm going to go ahead and give you an example one, and again, the variables will differ depending on what you're selling. Let's say my ideal target customer is, they work in X industry, they have X in yearly revenue, they have X amount of employees, and a special thing might be they use cryptocurrency to accept payments. So you might be only targeting companies that use cryptocurrency for those things, depending on what you're selling. And the last part is currently experiences X pain caused by Y problem. And this is really important because when you're thinking about prospecting and sales in general, you want to look at where people are facing the most pain. So where does it hurt the most? And the more it hurts, the more likely someone is willing to spend money to solve that problem. So not only are you selling something, you want to think of yourself as somewhat of a doctor and you're solving somebody's pain. An example of that would be using the ideal customer profile that I created would be if someone accepts cryptocurrencies to accept payments, they might be experiencing a really big problem of being hacked and someone stealing all of their data on their customers. So if you are a cryptocurrency consultant, you might be solving that specific pain and preventing their system from getting hacked, because if they get hacked, their business is dead. So that's just an example of how you can think about your ideal customer profile. Again, you could swap out the different variables, like adding things like their geolocation has to be in California or New York, or it might be you only target companies that use Oracle software. So whatever the case may be, you want to just slice and dice it so that it makes sense to you. But the main point is you're solving for someone's pain and you're creating all these variables of what fits your ideal customer profile. And so as you get an idea of who this person is, things are going to get a lot more easy. The reason is because of something called the network effect. So the network effect is essentially when you start getting your first few customers, your company or your brand starts developing logos. And so the more people you work with in a specific niche, the more other people want to work with you. So for example, let's say you're selling a service to all the doctors in Los Angeles. So if you have the top doctors in California, in Los Angeles using your product or service, all the other doctors are going to want to use your service as well. Because if the top people are using it, they're gonna think, why don't I use it as well? I'm falling behind the competition. So the more logos that you're able to get, the easier it is for people to want to work with you because you're building that credibility. And so to recap everything, Building an ideal customer profile is probably the most important aspect of prospecting because it's defining on what type of companies you are going for, and it's going to give you a data set so that you know exactly what's working and what's not. And if your first ideal customer profile isn't working for you, then you can make some changes to the variables and then go out and email more people, and you slowly start testing to see what is working. That's everything you need to know in creating your ideal customer profile. Again, customize it to whatever business you're in and what you're selling. And so the most important thing is to have this in mind as you move forward and you start building your list of people who you're going to reach out to.